Chapter 2606. What kind of unspeakable relationship did the young mistress of the Meow tribe have with the overlord that Yi Luo caught? So, Miss Meow came to apologize to Yi Luo and beg for his forgiveness? This isn't right. During the birthday banquet, young Mistress Meow had personally performed a dance and taken the initiative to approach Di Zun. However, she had been treated so coldly by Di Zun. How could he have a private relationship with young Miss Meow? So, what was going on with this scene? The 5 or 6 representatives of the various forces immediately became interested. They were definitely not gossiping. Because this was gossip about the overlord. It was extremely important. He wanted to figure out the relationship between the overlord and Miss Meow. Only then did they know how to face the Miaogu family. That was what Miao Yixiong had in mind. No matter what the overlord's attitude towards Miao Rongrong was. Anyway, it was enough to portray Miao Rongrong and Di Zun as having an affair, an ambiguous relationship. After that, when Rongrong and Di Zun appeared in front of everyone, it would not be so abrupt. Miao Yixiong hid the glint in his eyes and looked at Miao Rongrong, who was kneeling on the ground with an aggrieved expression. He coughed gently and a helpless look appeared on his face. He then turned to Steward Yin and said, "Sorry to trouble you with today's matter, Steward Yin. Both of us would like to plead with Miss Yi in private. Steward Yin, if you have other matters to attend to, please go ahead." It was obvious that the guest was being asked to leave, so Butler Yin couldn't stay any longer. Looking at the surroundings of the garden, there were about a dozen people coming and going. Under the watchful eyes of the public, the father and daughter of the Miao family could not do anything out of line. Moreover, Miss Yi was not someone who would be bullied easily. With that thought in mind, Butler Yin retreated. In the pavilion, as well as the small path leading to the pavilion, there was only Yi Qing Luo and the Miao father and daughter trio left. "Miss Yi, other than begging for your forgiveness, I also want to talk to you about the antidote." At this moment, Miao Yixiong put away the guilt and helplessness from before and lowered his voice as he spoke in a deep voice. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "You want the antidote and this is your attitude?" She glanced at Miao Rongrong, who was still kneeling on the path, and snorted. His smile was filled with mockery. Miao Rongrong was so infuriated that her face flushed red, almost unable to suppress the arrogance in her heart as she stood up to tear Yi Qing Luo apart. However, from the corner of her eyes, she glanced at the few people who were still watching from the opposite side of the pavilion and her eyes were filled with a layer of mist. "Miss Yi, during the birthday banquet, we've already tried our best to hide the fact that you've been poisoned. Please give me the antidote." The antidote which Miao Rongrong had taken from Yi Qing Luo's hands had long been consumed. And every time the poison flared up, she was in excruciating pain. She really didn't want to suffer this kind of pain again. "Conceal?" Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but laugh. "Do I need you to conceal? Besides, do you really want to hide it from me?" Miao Rongrong's eyes were filled with tears as she suddenly kowtowed to her. "Miss Yi, I really want to help you hide it. If you bear the name of a spy from another country, you will become a wanted criminal in the Nirvana realm." The pavilion and the strolling path on the opposite side were separated by a not-so-wide pond. The people from the other forces couldn't hear their conversation clearly. However, they could clearly see Miao Rongrong kowtowing to Yi Luo with a pitiful look. Chapter 2607. No matter what, everyone loved to sympathize with the weak. Especially when they saw Yi Qing Luo's arrogance. Miao Rongrong's pitiful look. The scales in their hearts naturally leaned towards Miao Rongrong's side. As men, they felt that it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Especially for an outstanding man like the overlord. Even if he had a harem of 3,000 concubines, that was also a normal move. Even if Miao Rongrong really had an affair with the overlord. Yi Qing Luo this was at most the overlord's mistress. She had no right to accuse Miao Rongrong and stop Miao Rongrong from interacting with the overlord. But although they were thinking this way in their hearts, but they had no intention of interfering. After all, for now, the overlord still pampered Yi Qing Luo. They didn't need to offend the overlord just because of a Miao Rongrong. Feeling the continuous gazes from the opposite side of the pavilion, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into an extremely faint cold arc. She naturally knew. What was Miao Rongrong up to? The more ostentatious she was, the more pitiful Miao Rongrong was. But, so what? So what if those people felt that Miao Rongrong was pitiful? Could they even come out to save the damsel in distress? She had said it before, she liked the look of others who were unhappy with her but didn't dare to do anything to her. Miss Yi, I'm serious. As long as you give me the antidote, I guarantee. I will definitely prove for you that you are not a spy from another country. Miao Rongrong saw Yi Qing Luo's teasing smile and not saying a word, and immediately became anxious. Looking at Miao Rongrong's anxious look and the jealousy in her eyes, Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but curled her pink lips as she laughed softly. Eldest Miss Miao, brains are a good thing, too bad you don't have it. Her devilish arrogance was reflected in Miao Rongrong's pupils. Miao Rongrong had some jealousy which couldn't be concealed, but more of it was fear and uneasiness towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo slowly stood up. Her fiery dress was pouring down. It was just a delicate face, but at this moment, it was sparkling with dazzling radiance. Miao Rongrong's pupils contracted uncontrollably. In her eyes, there was a shock that even she herself did not realize. Yi Qing Luo casually shot a glance at her as she laughed softly. Eldest young Miss Miao, just based on my relationship with Ah Xian, who would think that I'm a spy from another country? If I wanted to destroy the Miaogu clan and destroy the Northern Tide continent, why would I need to torment myself like this? Why would I be a spy? Miao Rongrong's face instantly turned pale. She quickly stood up and stumbled backwards, hitting the railing of the pavilion. Miao Rongrong, who on earth gave you the confidence to think that? At the same time that you want to seduce my man, I will still give you the antidote. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes filled with contempt. Miao Rongrong tightly pursed her pale lips, her delicate body leaning against the railing, shivering. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's arrogant ridicule, Miao Rongrong clenched her fists and looked down. Her messy black hair concealed the expression on her face. It also covered her facial features and gradually distorted them. Since that slut Yi Luo refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then there was no need for her to be soft-hearted. Originally, she intended to give Yi Luo this chance. As long as Yi Luo was willing to give her the antidote, she would only treat Yi Luo gently by a little. Now, she would make Yi Luo kneel on the ground in a sorry state. Not only would she make Yi Luo obediently hand over the antidote, she would also destroy Yi Luo completely. Chapter 2608. She squinted her eyes, and even through Miao Rongrong's messy hair, she could tell that Miao Rongrong's eyes were filled with killing intent. She couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to stick her face forward and let her hit her. After hitting her, she felt that her pride had been trampled. Then why did she need to offer herself up for her to hit? Yi Qing Luo sneered, since eldest Miss Miao doesn't intend to continue kneeling, I shall not accompany you. She came to the rear garden not only to watch the drama queen's performance. She had to search for the other part of Black Tortoise's soul. Where was it in the rear garden? Yi Luo. Miao Rongrong saw that she was about to leave and immediately raised her head in a flustered manner, calling out her name. After calling out, she realized that it was inappropriate and lowered her head, calling out timidly, Miss Yi. Don't go. If you want me to kneel, I will kneel. Saying that, she was about to continue kneeling. Miao Yixiong pulled Miao Rongrong from behind as his expression sunk. Miss Yi, although you and the Overlord are in front, but you're not married to the Overlord, so why must you be so overbearing? He seemed to be suppressing his anger as he dragged Miao Rongrong away. Rongrong admires the Overlord, that's a matter between Rongrong and the Overlord. Since you're not married to the Overlord, then you have no right to stop the Overlord from interacting with other women. This kind of jealous woman is not fit to be the mistress of the Imperial Palace. Rongrong, let's go. Miao Yixiong roared with righteous indignation. However, Yi Qing Luo's gaze went past Miao Yixiong and looked at the opposite side of the pond, at a flash of a figure. She frowned slightly. Why did she seem to see Miao Yi and Xian Gui? What were the two of them doing sneaking around? She wanted to take a closer look. But she could no longer see the two figures. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows knitted even tighter. She was about to push Miao Yixiong away and rush to the opposite side to chase after Miao Yi and Xian Gui. But her arm was suddenly grabbed by someone. She heard Miao Rongrong crying. Yi Qing Luo looked over impatiently. Miao Rongrong cried, "Father. I won't go. I won't go." Following that, he tried his best to struggle away from Miao Yixiong's arm. His two hands clutched onto Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightly. "Miss Yi. Please forgive me. Forgive me. Let go." Yi Qing Luo spat out the words coldly. Her icy cold gaze swept past the hand that was wrapped around her arm. But this time, Miao Rongrong did not look afraid. Her eyes were still brimming with tears, and she was crying so hard that she could not catch her breath. However, the words that came out of her mouth were filled with arrogance and a cold smile. "Yi Luo, you will pay for your foolishness." Her words had just ended when she suddenly grabbed Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightly as she screamed out, "Ah!" Then, he leaned against the railing of the pavilion. She kept screaming, "Miss Yi. Don't kill me. I don't dare to admire the overlord anymore, I don't dare to," amidst the screams and cries. Her body rolled over at the railing. His entire body flipped into the pool. From the opposite angle, they could only see Yi Qing Luo pushing Miao Rongrong into the water. "Ah, help. Help." Miao Rongrong flopped a few times in the water and then sank into the water. Eldest young Miss Miao. The few people from the various powerhouses on the opposite side saw that a life was about to be lost, so they couldn't continue to watch the show. They all jumped into the pool and saved Miao Rongrong up to the shore. Miao Yixiong was so angry that his face was steely green, as he shouted angrily at Yi Qing Luo, "Vicious woman. If anything happens to Rongrong, even if I have to risk the entire Miao Gu family, I will take revenge for Rongrong." Chapter 2609. This turn of events made the people from the major forces who were watching the show feel ashamed. "Miss Yi, you really have no tolerance for others. Young Lady Miao has specially come to apologize to you. Even if you don't accept or forgive her, you can't do anything to her. Lady Miao is one of the candidates to be chosen as the sacred maiden of the Miao tribe. Aren't you disrespecting the century-old Miao tribe by killing her? Miss Yi, although it's wrong for eldest Lady Miao to admire the overlord, but, if the overlord and eldest Lady Miao are in love, treating eldest Lady Miao in this way is a disgrace to a woman's character." Countless comments were on Miao Rongrong's side. From Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's occasionally loud conversation, they could roughly guess. It was highly possible that Miao Rongrong had an affair with the overlord and was caught by Yi Luo. Yi Luo dared not blame Di Zun. So he attacked Miao Rongrong. After all, Yi Luo's appearance couldn't compare to Miao Rongrong's at all. No wonder the overlord accepted Miao Rongrong's admiration. How could an old love compare to a new one? This group of opportunistic forces immediately prepared to protect the overlord's new sweetheart and stand up for her. He listened to the clamor of the crowd. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as her gaze swept across everything on the opposite side to ascertain that Miao Yi and Xian Gui were no longer around. Only then did he turn his eyes back to the Miao family's father and daughter. Looking at the expressions of their drama queens, Yi Qing Luo's lips suddenly curled into a contemptuous sneer. Miao Rongrong was actually playing such a cheap trick in front of her. Miao Rongrong wanted to lead everyone to believe that she, Miao Rongrong, and Dmo Xian had an intimate relationship. Then she would lead everyone to believe that she, Yi Luo, was a woman who was easily jealous, and was not fit to stand beside Dmo Xian. Unfortunately, Miao Rongrong's wishful thinking was wrong. Her soul did not grow up in this era. He didn't think it was normal to have multiple wives. Jealousy? She, Yi Qing Luo, was easily jealous. The devilish smile on Yiqing Luo's lips grew brighter and brighter. Her eyes, which were as bright as stars, revealed a devilish smile as she looked at the people who were criticizing her, as well as the Miao family's father and daughter, who were glaring at her with hatred. Word by word, she said decisively, "Shut your dog mouths." These cold words seemed to be mixed with ice, causing those people to instinctively close their mouths. When they came to their senses, their faces immediately turned ashen. They were actually intimidated by a yellow-haired little girl. Miao Rongrong, who was lying in Miao Yixiong's arms and dripping wet, immediately cried a few times. Her frail body trembled uncontrollably and it was hard to tell whether it was the water or tears on her face. "Miss Yi, why did you push me into the water? I just want to ask for your forgiveness. Why do you have to do this to me? I'm happy, I'm willing." Yiqing Luo laughed mischievously, "Even if I kill you, what can you do?" She didn't bother to deny it. Under Miao Rongrong's pitiful disguise, her denial was merely a denial. No one would believe her. You're actually so vicious." Miao Rongrong was extremely satisfied with Yiqing Luo's reply. In her eyes, she almost couldn't suppress the joy. Especially when her gaze saw that figure who was flying over swiftly behind Yiqing Luo. Chapter 26:10. Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. She remembered that early this morning, Tang Beiyuan anxiously asked him to leave, saying that there was an urgent matter which required him to settle personally. Dmo Xian then left. Why was he back so soon? Was he done with his business? Yiqing Luo's stunned expression, in Miao Rongrong's eyes, became panic. Under Miao Rongrong's wet eyelashes, her eyes sparkled with a sinister sneer. As long as the overlord knew that the woman whom he fancied was using his power to be arrogant and despotic, and had a vicious heart, the overlord would definitely see the good in her. Hence, Miao Rongrong put in even more effort to perform overlord. Rongrong only wanted to apologize to Miss Yi for sending the pastries yesterday, but she was choking with sobs as she complained. But she saw a tall figure dressed in a flowing purple robe, as though he had gathered all the light, walking quickly towards them. The next moment, Yiqing Luo felt a warmth on her back. The familiar sandalwood scent seeped into her nose. The man's arm had already encircled her slender waist. Yiqing Luo very naturally placed her hand on the back of the man's hand, slightly glancing sideways, her eyes filled with gentleness. "Have you settled the matter?" "Dmo Xian whispered softly beside her ear. The two of them naturally hugged each other, with a look of deep affection. This made those who were originally helping Miao Rongrong to accuse Yiqing Luo shut their mouths. At this moment, Miao Rongrong's sobs were all stuck in her throat, not knowing whether to continue crying or not. Could it be that she was crying so pitifully that Dizun didn't even notice her existence? This point, the crowd also realized. They looked at the drenched Miao Rongrong wrapped in Miao Yixiong's brocade robe, and their gazes changed. Didn't this pair of father and daughter say Miao Rongrong and the overlord had an affair? No matter how they looked at it, the overlord didn't seem to put Miao Rongrong in his eyes at all. Miao Yixiong's face was steely green, staring at Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo's gentle talk. He secretly gritted his teeth and raised his voice, "Overlord. Even though Lady Yi is your woman, her heart is so vicious and jealous. She's not fit to stand by your side." Miao Yixiong's voice made Dmo Xian have a slight reaction. He lifted his eyelids and glanced at Miao Yixiong with his deep peach blossom eyes. This gaze sent a chill down Miao Yixiong's spine. But when he thought of his plan, he held Miao Rongrong tightly in his arms, so tightly that Miao Rongrong burst into tears. "Miss Yi dared to kill me in front of so many people and pushed me into the water. In private, doesn't she want to kill all the women who tried to get close to His Majesty?" Miao Rongrong burst into tears. Miao Yixiong looked distressed and his face was filled with anger. "Sir Overlord, the Miao tribe must demand an explanation from Lady Yi." This commotion naturally attracted many guests from the Qin Yu sect. In total, there were at least 30 people. Housekeeper Ian was originally worried that the Miao father and daughter pair would do something to Yiqing Luo, so he had been paying attention to this side. When the matter was blown up, he immediately sent someone out to inform Yin Qinghao and Yin Yanxiu who were outside. Whereas at the pavilion, Dmo Xian listened to Miao Yixiong's indignant words. He held Yiqing Luo's waist and slowly walked towards the pavilion's railing. The place where they were standing was a level higher than the opposite. Chapter 26:11. The nobleman's lips were obviously hooked into a smile, but no one could feel the slightest bit of warmth under his gaze. Everyone felt as if they were in an ice cellar. It was so cold that they couldn't move. Those who came to watch the show wanted to escape. But they discovered that because of their nervousness, their bodies were stiff and unable to move. Moreover, the moment they moved, in this eerie and silent atmosphere, would definitely be the center of attention. Hence, everyone stood stiffly on the spot, watching Dmo Xian's expression carefully. Even the sound of their breathing subconsciously became extremely light. Under this strange atmosphere, Dmo Xian slightly narrowed his peach blossom eyes, reflecting an extremely cold ray of light. His thin lips moved slightly as he spat out each word coldly. Explanation? I wonder what explanation Leader Miao wants. Under this majestic aura, Miao Yixiong was so frightened that he couldn't utter a word for a long time. His entire face was almost pale. The gaze he used to look at Dmo Xian was also filled with fear. Dmo Xian's smile deepened, the coldness in his eyes deepened. Since Leader Miao hasn't thought of what explanation you want, then this lord will decide for you. Soon after, his voice that was filled with a demonic charm resounded in everyone's ears. Why don't we destroy the Miao Gu family? Is this explanation satisfactory to Leader Miao? Obviously, he was just using the most ordinary tone to say it. But everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts to the top of their heads. Everyone couldn't help but shiver a little. One after another, they shrank their necks. Especially those few forces who previously stood by the Miao father and daughter's side. It was as if they were fleeing, distancing themselves from the Miao father and daughter, for fear of being involved with them. Destroy the Miao Gu family. The Miao Gu family, which had almost 1,000 years of history. When Di Zun said that he wanted to destroy them, his tone was so light and casual. But they absolutely believed it. As long as the overlord wanted it. Not to mention the Miao Gu family. Even the North Wave continent would not be a problem. This Miao Gu family's leader was actually so foolish to want the overlord to give an explanation. Now, not to mention an explanation. Whether his Miao Gu clan could survive or not was now a problem. Miao Yixiong's cold sweat instantly soaked through his clothes. His hand, which was holding Miao Rongrong, trembled for a moment. Di Zun, this is not a joke. Di Zun really wanted to destroy the Miao Gu family. That bitch. What kind of drug did the overlord eat to make the overlord fall head over heels for her? Miao Yixiong tried his best to restrain the fear in his heart. With a pale face, he said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, it was Miss Yi who pushed Rongrong. Aren't you afraid that the world will laugh at you for protecting her like this, Your Majesty, for becoming a fatuous ruler because of a woman? His words made Dmo Xian raise his brows slightly. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes met Miao Yixiong's face with a faint smile. The smile at the corner of his mouth was very cold. My woman, I love to spoil her uncontrollably. F***ck. Another critical dog food. The atmosphere was still so strange and horrifying. However, the onlookers did not know why, after the overlord said this, their hearts were boiling. These tons of dog food had made them deeply aware of what was going on, Yi Luo's position in the overlord's heart. No one could replace him. Chapter 26:12. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she leaned into Dmo Xian's arms, squinting her eyes slightly towards the Miao father and daughter pair's low-level tricks. She really couldn't muster up any interest. But Miao Yixiong was right about one thing. Dmo Xian's actions really sounded like a muddle-headed and tyrannical ruler just to win a beauty's smile. She was Dmo Xian's woman, which also represented Dmo Xian's foresight and taste. No matter how Dmo Xian protected her, she could not embarrass Dmo Xian. Her slender brows rose slightly as she patted the hand on her waist lightly. There was no need for any words. Their tacit understanding made Dmo Xian directly let go of her hand. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she comforted the man behind her. Following that, she patted the pavilion's railing and flipped herself up. A ball of fiery figure instantly landed on the opposite side of the pavilion, in front of Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong was suddenly approached by the young lady as he staggered a few steps back. Yiqing Luo didn't even take a look at Miao Yixiong as she smiled sweetly at Miao Rongrong. Eldest Miss Miao thinks that I pushed you? The wet pond water dripped onto the ground. Miao Rongrong shivered as she leaned into Miao Yixiong's arms. Her face was filled with fear and terror. This wasn't an act. It was Miao Rongrong's real emotions. She had not expected the overlord to have such deep feelings for this slut. Totally not minding the infamy to destroy the Miao Gu family. If her and her father's plan failed, the Miao Gu family would really cease to exist. She absolutely could not let the Miao Gu family be destroyed. She was the Miao Gu tribe's sacred lady. The future sacred lady of the Miao Gu tribe. She still had to ascend to the upper realm through the position of sacred lady. She still had a beautiful future. This plan could only succeed and absolutely could not fail. Miao Rongrong pursed her lips as she replied in a trembling voice, Sorry Miss Yi, I've misunderstood. Yiqing Luo's lips curled. Didn't you swear earlier that I pushed you and wanted to kill you? Why did you misunderstand again? Miao Rongrong lowered her head even more. I was wrong. Miss Yi, please forgive me. Yiqing Luo smiled evilly. It's good that you know you're in the wrong, but there's no need to talk about forgiveness, because from the beginning till the end, I've only treated you as a joke. Yes, I am a joke. So Miss Yi, I beg you. Let me go. Let the Miao Gu clan go. Miao Rongrong choked with sobs and couldn't speak. Her entire body was trembling from fear. Miao Rongrong's plea, on the contrary, it made Yiqing Luo appear even more arrogant and despotic. Especially those who came later, when they saw this scene. No matter what, she felt that Yiqing Luo was forcing Miao Rongrong to admit that Miao Rongrong falling into the water had nothing to do with her. Yiqing Luo naturally guessed everyone's thoughts. She rubbed her hands disapprovingly as she tilted her head and gave an innocent smile. Eldest young Miss Miao, I only wanted to tell you one thing. Towards those scums who tried to seduce my man and frame me. If I want to take action, I will absolutely not use such a low IQ action to humiliate myself. Her words paused as she asked smilingly, make a guess, what will I do? Miao Rongrong naturally knew that Yiqing Luo's question was definitely not something good. But before Miao Rongrong had the chance to reply, she felt her collar being yanked by someone fiercely. Miao Yixiong's coat which she was wearing slid onto the ground. Chapter 26:13. Miao Rongrong realized that her current situation was no different from not wearing any clothes at all. Especially the water droplets that were still dripping from her body. Instead, there was a different kind of temptation. There were already quite a number of men who stared at her body with malicious intentions. Their gazes were like fire, as though they had seen through those few layers of wet clothes, seeing through everything about her. She screamed and tried to cover herself. But before she could even raise her hand, bam! A slap landed on Miao Rongrong's face. This slap was full of strength. After a while, Miao Rongrong's face was already red and swollen. This slap also made Miao Rongrong dazed, even forgetting to cover herself up. The surrounding gasps of cold air made Miao Rongrong regain some of her rationality. Before she could open her mouth, Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain coming from her chest. She was kicked by someone. His entire body was sent flying by a powerful impact. Miao Rongrong fell into the pool with a plop sound, splashing countless of water. Miao Rongrong was choked by the water and struggled to get out of the water. But after being tugged by Yi Qing Luo, her 4 limbs had no strength at all. Gulp gulp. She wanted to ask for help, but was only poured into big mouthfuls of water. Miao Rongrong could almost feel that her consciousness was gradually drifting away. Rongrong. Miao Yixiong's eyes widened as he rushed to the side of the pool, looking at his daughter who had stopped struggling in the water. His face was ashen. Looking around, those few who had saved Miao Rongrong once had no intention of going into the water to save her. He clenched his teeth and jumped into the water himself, carrying Miao Rongrong to the shore. Just as they were about to go ashore, a light voice was heard from the other end of the pavilion. Since Miao Yixiong and eldest young Miss Miao love to move around underwater, I shall satisfy the both of you, father and daughter, to soak in the water for 4 hours. Miao Yixiong's action of going ashore paused. Miao Rongrong, who was leaning on his shoulder, was so shocked that she spat out a mouthful of water. Looking at the 2 people in the water, Yi Qing Luo's face didn't have a single trace of warmth, and her charming eyes were so cold that it felt icy cold. If it was me, I would do this, do you know? She dusted off her hands, then pulled out a handkerchief to wipe her hands. Then, she threw the handkerchief at Miao Yixiong's face. With a leap, she returned back into Dmo Xian's arms. She leaned on Dmo Xian, her long and narrow eyes flashed with a biting cold glint. Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong, don't play with this kind of imbecile plaything in front of me, otherwise, the next time, Xian's words will become reality. She sneered as she pulled Dmo Xian's hand and turned to leave. Xian, let's go back to the courtyard. Just standing here, I feel that we're especially degrading. Dmo Xian nodded slightly as he walked side by side with Yi Qing Luo and left the back garden. When Yin Qinghao hurried over, Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo had long left. The 2 people soaking in the water had ashen complexions and were trembling non-stop. The surrounding people were standing by the side of the pool, pointing and gossiping, as though they were ridiculing something. Yin Qinghao immediately walked over and called for this person to go down and fish out the Miao father and daughter duo. The person by the shore immediately stopped him. Sect Master Yin, the overlord had personally instructed to let this father and daughter duo soak in the water for 4 hours before they can come out. Yin Qinghao was stunned as he took a look at the 2 people in the pool. Miao Yixiong had to carry Miao Rongrong, who was already weak and powerless, and to stabilize his body in the water, so his face had long turned pale. Hearing the explanation from the person by the shore, his expression was getting darker and darker. Chapter 26:14. 4 hours. Yin Qinghao muttered softly as he raised his eyes and looked at Miao Yixiong. Since it's the overlord's instructions, then I'll have to trouble Miao clan's clan leader. Miao Yixiong was so angry that he gritted his teeth as his eyes turned scarlet red. The pond water soaked his entire body, making him look extremely disheveled and unbearable. His heart was filled with anger. But he maintained a helpless expression as he shot a gentle glance at Miao Rongrong, who was leaning on his shoulder. It's Rongrong who made Miss Yi unhappy, and Miss Yi wants to punish Rongrong, so it's what Rongrong deserves. He didn't mention a single word about Dmo Xian. But he attributed the reason why they were reduced to this state, soaking in the pond, to Yi Qing Luo. Those who were watching earlier were filled with disdain, although they didn't know Yi Luo well. But from the birthday banquet, they could tell. This lady's character would absolutely disdain to do such a thing like pushing someone into the water secretly. If she wanted to do it, it would be like what she did earlier, directly kicking him into the pond. Thinking of Miao Rongrong's sweet crying look when she saw Dmo Xian, anyone with brains knew clearly. This was obviously Miao Rongrong who intentionally fell into the water to frame Yi Luo. They had even fallen into the Miao father and daughter duo's trap. And even helped the father and daughter duo to speak up. And almost offended the overlord. Miao Yixiong was still trying to push everything onto Yi Luo. But there were some who heard the commotion and rushed over. Upon hearing Miao Yixiong's words, they followed his lead and misunderstood Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo held on to Dmo Xian's arm as they walked back to the courtyard. The design of Elation Sec's back garden was extremely elegant. The trees on both sides of the path were lush and lush. Not too far away was a flower bed which had been meticulously trimmed by the gardener, and every part was extremely pleasing to the eye. I wasn't around. Why did you run over to meet the father and daughter duo alone? Dmo Xian glanced sideways and his peach blossom eyes were deeply fixated on the young lady beside him, his brows filled with gentleness. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled into a sweet smile as she raised her head and rested her chin on his arm. When you were in the upper realm, do you still remember the memory of the doppelganger who was by my side? I remember. Dmo Xian chuckled lightly. Mo Yao's pupils reflected the young lady's disguised face. Clearly, it was a far cry from her gorgeous face. But, as long as it was her. Even he was amazed. He would have the urge to hug the girl tightly and carry her into the room. How could Yi Qing Luo not see through the man's naked gaze? She rolled her eyes and raised her hand to cover his eyes, which were filled with emotion. The main reason I came to the back garden was because I felt the summoning of the other part of the black tortoise's soul. Black tortoise. Dmo Xian murmured. Yi Qing Luo could feel the eyes under her palm, the man's overly long eyelashes, sweeping past her palm. Following that, Dmo Xian raised his hand and gently held the young lady's little hand. You can't sense it now? Yi Qing Luo shook her head. The black tortoise's presence has disappeared. After arriving at the back garden, the intense reaction within the profound jade heart had already gradually dissipated. Especially when Miao Rongrong was about to fall into the water to frame her. All the senses had completely disappeared. Otherwise she would have pulled Dmo Xian along to accompany her to search for the other part of the black tortoise's soul. Chapter 26:15. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Confirm the location. Black tortoise's soul will definitely be collected. If I'm not around, even if you sense black tortoise's soul, don't be alone with the Miao father and daughter. Dmo Xian's hand followed her head and landed on her bare face. His slender fingers curled up slightly, pinching the flesh on her cheek, although the Miao family is nothing to be afraid of, but it is after all a place that has been around for nearly 1,000 years, and mainly uses venomous spells. You don't know much about venomous spells, so it's best to be careful. I know. Yi Qing Luo didn't want to be outdone as she tiptoed and pinched his face. These father and daughter have been jumping in front of me for the past 2 days, I can roughly guess their motive. Good that you know, don't make me worry. Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes were filled with gentleness as he gently embraced her petite body, his thin lips imprinted on her hair. Feeling the man's deep concern and pampering, Yi Qing Luo's smile became sweeter as her arms circled around his neck, pulling him closer to her. Following that, her pink lips landed a light kiss on his chin. After today's commotion, they won't have the energy to find trouble with us for the next few days, don't worry. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Just as Dmo Xian was being teased by this kiss of hers, he wanted to turn this light kiss into a passionate kiss. Yi Qing Luo had already moved away. Like a butterfly, she quickly jogged forward, and even turned her head back, revealing a crafty smile at him. Showing the delicateness that a girl should have. Dmo Xian stood behind, looking at his empty arm. Then looking at the young lady who was smiling like a flower. A pair of bold peach blossom eyes, filled with pampering. That cold and hard face of peerless elegance also added a bit of gentleness. His lips carried a joyful smile, his eyes were focused, as if in his heart, there was only her and only her. There were people passing by one after another. When they saw this scene, a surge of envy and yearning arose in their hearts. Seeing the overlord, they were extremely excited. But such a beautiful atmosphere, they couldn't bear to disturb, nor did they dare to disturb. Another 3 days went by. These 3 days, the Miao father and daughter indeed had no energy to find trouble with Yi Qing Luo. Perhaps it was because of Dmo Xian. It was about the future garden. No one mentioned it again. No one intentionally mentioned the Miao father and daughter duo in front of Yi Qing Luo. Apart from the various forces that would occasionally come to their courtyard in an attempt to establish a relationship with them, it was rather peaceful. And on this fourth day, before the sky had even turned bright, a clamor was heard outside Yiqing Luo and the others' courtyard. Yiqing Luo woke up from Dmo Xian's arms and yawned tiredly. With his keen senses, he could hear Butler Yin's deliberately lowered voice from outside the courtyard. He seemed to be arguing with someone. Dmo Xian's large palm covered her eyes. You must be exhausted last night. Sleep a little more, I'll go out to take a look. I'm fine, it seems to be housekeeper Yin's voice, something might have happened. Yiqing Luo propped up her weak limbs and flipped her messy hair. Her waist suddenly tightened, and the man's hoarse voice, which was sober in the middle of the night, rang in her ears. Are you all right? Does that mean I didn't work hard enough last night? Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red as her little hands pushed away his chest. Stop being so frivolous. Quickly put on your clothes and go out to take a look. Men's clothes were easy to wear. Especially Dmo Xian. His arms stretched out. His legs got off the bed. Chapter 26:16. I'll go take a look. Dmo Xian scooped up the young lady and planted a kiss on her lips before he turned and walked out of the room. After Yiqing Luo was dressed, she followed the voice and walked out of the courtyard. She heard a man's voice filled with anger. Overlord, although my Miao Gu family doesn't close your palace, but we are after all a 1,000-year-old family. You don't differentiate between right and wrong, using the annihilation of the Miao Gu family to threaten me. I'm not convinced. This voice, it wasn't unfamiliar. When Yiqing Luo heard this, she knew that this man was the son of the second master of the Miao Gu family, Miao Jingwei, who had blocked the attack for Xiao Lingling at the Peach Blossom restaurant. It was probably not even 4 a.m. He came to her courtyard at this hour, just to create a ruckus over Miao Rongrong's matter. Young Master Miao. Housekeeper Yin was shocked by Miao Jingwei's bold words and immediately raised his voice to remind Miao Jingwei. However, Miao Jingwei didn't have any intention to retreat. Rongrong's life is in danger. No matter what, I hope Miss Yi can make a trip to see Rongrong, at least. Whatever she did to Rongrong, she must resolve it. Around them, there were also a few people discussing in low voices. Apparently, they were attracted by Miao Jingwei's actions. It was not even morning yet. The spacious Joy sect seemed extremely empty and desolate. Miao Jingwei's sonorous and unyielding voice fell. Only those onlookers who were attracted by the commotion could be heard. Just as this strange atmosphere that sent chills down one's spine was about to suffocate the crowd, she then heard the noble and elegant man's thin lips spit out a sentence indifferently. So what if you don't accept it? Whether the Miao Gu family exists or not, it doesn't matter to me. Overlord. Miao Jingwei's eyes turned red from Dmo Xian's words. He had already knelt here. And had already clashed with Dmo Xian. If this matter wasn't settled properly, he would die sooner or later. He clenched his fists tightly and suppressed his fear towards Dmo Xian as he lowered his head, not daring to look at Dmo Xian. Obviously, Dmo Xian didn't look much older than him. But unfortunately, Dmo Xian just stood there. It was an oppressive feeling. It was so heavy that even breathing became extremely difficult for him. Scram. Spitting out those cold words, Dmo Xian couldn't even be bothered to look at him as he turned around to return to the courtyard. Butler Yin immediately bent down to pull Miao Jingwei away. But Miao Jingwei didn't know where the courage came from as he suddenly dashed towards Dmo Xian, wanting to hug Dmo Xian's leg. Overlord. I beg you to let Miss Yi see Rongrong. Only Miss Yi can save Rongrong. I beg you. But, he had yet to get close to Dmo Xian. A whirlwind suddenly blew in front of him. Miao Jingwei felt as if his body had been pushed by some kind of power, and he was sent flying backwards. He fell heavily to the ground and rolled on the ground in pain. The Overlord hates it when people get close to him. Young Master Miao, please leave with me. Butler Yin frowned and tried to persuade him. Miao Jingwei screamed in pain. His screams were extremely loud in the wee hours of the morning. Yi Qing Luo had just walked to the courtyard entrance when she saw this scene. Looking at Miao Jingwei, who was rolling on the ground like a madman and throwing a tantrum, Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. This Miao family's people were really unscrupulous, throwing a tantrum and using shameless methods. Chapter 26:17. The first thing he saw was a young lady dressed in a fiery red long robe as she walked over slowly. Perhaps she had just woken up and hadn't had the time to tidy herself up. The young lady's long black hair was scattered over her shoulders. The early morning breeze was slightly chilly and carried a trace of moisture as it blew her hair behind her back. The fiery red dress was fluttering in the wind like a fluttering flame, bobbing up and down. Under the two lanterns hanging above the courtyard door, the young lady's beautiful face was filled with an inexplicable charm. Miao Jingwei stared at the young lady as she walked over, and for a moment, he even forgot about rolling on the ground. Suddenly, Miao Jingwei shuddered. An inexplicable chill which made one's scalp go numb surged into his heart. His eyes flashed as he looked towards Dmo Xian. He saw that originally noble, aloof and disdainful man was looking at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. That gaze was absolutely his lifetime's nightmare. Was because he stared at Yi Luo. So, the overlord was jealous? How much did he pamper and love Yi Luo? So he didn't even allow another man to look at Yi Luo? Miao Jingwei's heart suddenly surged with an uneasy premonition. Second young master Miao. Yi Qing Luo's clear and melodious voice had an intentional teasing tone. Since when did second young master Miao become a trickster, specially running over to my courtyard to roll on the ground? She raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian. Xian, do you think I should tip second young master Miao some money? The young lady had just opened her mouth. Dmo Xian had already stretched out his hand. Yi Qing Luo unpretentiously placed her hand into Dmo Xian's hand. The next moment, she was dragged into Dmo Xian's arms. The man's warm embrace instantly eroded the coolness on her body. She raised her head and placed her chin on the man's chest, revealing a sweet smile. My money is your money. If you want a tip, it's up to you. Dmo Xian's voice was gentle, as though the person who was emitting a chill earlier wasn't him. Miao Jingwei regained his senses from the shock. Hearing their conversation, he suddenly felt a burst of embarrassment. Those who were watching the show couldn't help but burst out laughing. Miao Jingwei's actions just now were indeed like those street performers who perform tricks. Miss Yi, you've finally come. Miao Jingwei tried his best to ignore those ridiculing gazes, and according to his own plan, he knelt down in front of Yi Qing Luo. As long as their plan succeeded, the humiliation he had suffered today would disappear from this world forever. Everyone who had seen what had happened tonight would disappear. This thought made Miao Jingwei even more determined as he knelt down and moved towards Yi Qing Luo's feet. Miss Yi, I beg you. Go and save Rongrong. She is our Miao tribe's future sacred maiden, our future hope. She cannot die. She cannot die. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she smirked. Miao Rongrong is going to die. He sounded as if Miao Rongrong's death was nothing out of the ordinary. Miao Jingwei clenched his fists tightly as he kowtowed on the ground. 3 days ago, Rongrong had offended Miss Yi and was punished by Miss Yi to soak in the pond for 4 hours. Rongrong's body, originally because of Miss Yi, is extremely weak, and after soaking in the pond for 4 hours, she can't take it. Can't take it. One by one, the heavy kowtowing sounds were extremely loud. Not long later, the ground had turned red. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she had no intention to stop him. Chapter 26:18. Then why did he continue to kowtow? Yi Qing Luo put on a curious look as she asked. Miao Jingwei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Following that, he heard Yi Qing Luo clicking her tongue as she continued, surely he wouldn't want to kowtow to his death in front of us, then let us be the scapegoat, right? Miao Jingwei coughed hard. The blood oozing out of his forehead made him dizzy. His body swayed and fell to the ground with a thud. Miss Yi, Please, please save Rongrong, only you can save her." After saying this, Miao Jingwei could no longer stand the dizziness in his head and completely fainted. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she stared at Miao Jingwei's deathly pale face. As her brows creased slightly, "We really have to take the blame this time." Dmo Xian tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "If I kill him, no one would dare to say a word, but... Miao Rongrong, do you want him dead?" Yi Qing Luo's motive for coming to Northern Tide Continent was to let the Miao Gu family's people suppress Long Yunzhan's venom. If Miao Rongrong died, could it be that he had to bring Miao Yixiong to the West Continent? As for the candidate to suppress the parasite poison for Zhan, I have a better choice. Yi Qing Luo mysteriously hooked her lips, but... For now, before we are certain, Miao Rongrong cannot die for the time being. Then, I'll accompany you over. Dmo Xian didn't probe further as he respected Yi Qing Luo's choice. Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Miao Jingwei as her charming eyes flashed past a dark and gloomy glint. "I'm afraid it's a trap." Miao Jingwei came to her courtyard and made such a big fuss. He definitely had ulterior motives. Was Miao Rongrong's life really in danger, or was it just an excuse to lure her over? This point needed to be verified. "I'm here." Dmo Xian gently rubbed her head, his thin lips curving into a shallow arc. The smile on Yi Qing Luo's face grew thicker and warmer. With Xian around, even if there was a trap, it would be easily solved. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian arrived at the courtyard where the Miao Gu family and the others were staying. This courtyard, as compared to Yi Qing Luo and the others' courtyard, had an obvious difference. When he stepped into the courtyard, he did not hear any signs of life. Yi Qing Luo released her perception, and other than the master bedroom, there was no one else in the entire courtyard. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "There's no trap." Dmo Xian's large palm covered her head, his gaze slightly sunk. "In terms of profound strength, Miao Yixiong is not as good as you. Arranging an assassin is not realistic." "So?" Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes in realization. "What are their specialties?" Dmo Xian followed up. "Voodoo." Yi Qing Luo laughed. "I wonder if Miao Rongrong will still be able to poison us when the poison acts up." The two of them went straight to Miao Rongrong's room. Miao Yixiong's hoarse voice could be heard as he approached. "Rongrong, my hopes are all on you, you must not die. If you die, the Miao tribe will be finished." What responded to him was a barely audible cough. "Didn't Yi Luo say that she needs you to help her get rid of the curse? She won't let you die. Hang in there, Jingwei will bring Yi Luo here soon. You won't die. You are the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe." Miao Yixiong was still muttering something in a low voice, as though he hadn't noticed that someone was approaching from behind. Suddenly, Miao Rongrong, who was lying on the bed, started to twitch violently. Following that extremely pale face became twisted and sinister. Her body also started to bend. Chapter 26:19. This was the symptom of the poison acting up. Miao Yixiong's face was filled with anxiety as he held Miao Rongrong's hand. Because of the intense pain all over his body, as if thousands of sharp blades were cutting his body viciously. It was the high fever that caused him to lose consciousness. Miao Rongrong used all her strength to hold on tightly to Miao Yixiong's hand. Miao Yixiong's face twitched. He didn't struggle as he allowed Miao Rongrong to hold his hand. His voice was taut as he endured the pain as he spoke. "Rongrong, hold on, the guards will bring Miss Yi over soon and the antidote will be here soon. Bear with it." In the depths of his drooping eyelids, there was a sinister look. But Miao Rongrong couldn't hear his voice. Because of the pain, her twitching body was stiff like a devil, extremely terrifying. Miao Yixiong couldn't stand the pain as he used all his strength to struggle free from Miao Rongrong's hand and turned around. "I'll go take a look at the guards now, Rongrong, you." When he turned around and saw the two people behind him, his expression changed abruptly. His eyes widened as he went wild with joy. "Overlord. Miss Yi, you're here." He seemed to be excited as his entire body was trembling as his eyes stared straight at the two people in front of him, unable to suppress his excitement and joy. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly. Miao Yixiong's performance was too exaggerated. So exaggerated that she started to suspect Miao Yixiong. Or perhaps, if Miao Yixiong was really as concerned about Miao Rongrong as he had shown. His first reaction when he saw them should be to beg her to cure Miao Rongrong. Instead of standing here, looking at them in ecstasy. As though he had completely forgotten that his heartache daughter was still suffering. Dmo Xian slightly tightened his grip on Yi Qing Luo as his gaze went past Miao Yixiong and landed on Miao Rongrong. Miao Yixiong finally reacted as he rushed towards Yi Qing Luo. Miss Yi, please save Rongrong, her antidote. Her antidote has already been taken. Please give her the antidote. He was just about to pounce forward. But before he could get within 3 steps of Yi Qing Luo, a purple light flashed past his eyes. A powerful profound energy blocked his footsteps. Dmo Xian's purple robe fluttered in the wind as he stared coldly at Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong felt a chill run down his spine and did not dare to take another step forward. Miao Rongrong is not dead yet. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she looked at the person on the bed who was in so much pain that his face was contorted. Why did Leader Miao think that I would give her the antidote? Her words had just ended when Yi Qing Luo looked at Miao Rongrong's eyes, as it flashed slightly. Her little hand unknowingly tugged at Dmo Xian's robe at his waist. He lowered his eyes. She looked up. Their eyes met, transmitting a message. If he wasn't mistaken, just now, when she was teasing Miao Rongrong about not dying, Miao Rongrong's curled-up fingers suddenly seemed to gain strength as she tightly clenched them into fists. Dmo Xian nodded his head slightly. At this moment, Miao Yixiong suddenly knelt in front of the two of them, his face full of guilt and pleading. He looked very much like a father who would disregard his pride and dignity for the sake of his daughter. Miss Yi, don't you need Rongrong to do something for you? As long as you're willing to save her, as long as she's alive. I promise you as the Miao clan leader, to let Rongrong help you. To the best of my ability. Heh. Chapter 26-20. Yi Qing Luo's smile gradually deepened as her long and narrow charming eyes were seductive. I've given her a chance, but she insisted on choosing this path. To make herself suffer. I'm so kind-hearted, so naturally I'll help her pursue the path of suffering. With that, she raised her hand and rubbed her chin. She smiled in admiration. Now, she should have found the pain she was pursuing. Miss Yi. Rongrong knows she's wrong. She shouldn't have acted on her own and shouldn't have disobeyed you. I promise, she won't go against Miss Yi again. Miao Yixiong humbled himself and pleaded sincerely. The person on the bed screamed in pain at the right time. His voice was as hoarse as a sawtooth, and he could only let out an extremely faint scream. It was as if he had shouted himself hoarse and exhausted all his strength. Miao Yixiong's heart ached even more as he pleaded for mercy. However, the two audience members were not very interested in his performance. Yi Qing Luo only stared at Miao Rongrong, looking at Miao Rongrong's painful and distorted moans, her face which was flushed red from the high fever, as her heart was in a dilemma. Should he save him or not? Although Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure if Miao Rongrong's poison had really acted up. However, this high fever was real. In addition, Miao Rongrong had taken the antidote from her. According to the time, Miao Rongrong had indeed finished it. If he didn't save them. Even if it was a fake poison relapse. Miao Rongrong would also die tomorrow. Her intuition told her that she could choose to believe the person she guessed. But, before she had concrete evidence to confirm her intuition, she did not dare to use Long Yunzhan's life as a wager. If he followed his intuition and allowed Miao Rongrong to die, and her intuition was wrong. Among the people of the Miaogu clan, who else could help Long Yunzhan suppress the gu poison? Miao Yixiong? He was afraid that this Miao Yixiong would be harder to control than Miao Rongrong. Just as she was thinking, she felt an itch on her waist. She raised her eyes in resentment and glared at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as his shimmering peach blossom eyes blinked devilishly at her. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. That's right. They could first see what the father and daughter were up to. Then, he would seize the opportunity to ruin all of their plans. When all hope was lost. If the Miao father and daughter wanted to survive, they could only obediently follow her wishes. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and looked at Miao Yixiong, who was still kneeling on the ground, pleading for mercy for Miao Rongrong. Her crafty eyes flashed a cold arc. Miao Yixiong, how can I believe your words? After all, Miao Rongrong lied to me once. Naturally, there will be a second time, a third time. I can swear on the most venomous curse of the Miao Miao tribe. Miao Yixiong saw Yiqing Luo showing signs of loosening up and immediately replied agitatedly. Yiqing Luo raised her brows, then. I will cure Miao Rongrong of the poison. Before Miao Rongrong's task is completed, she can only be used by me. You don't have any objections, right? No. Miao Yixiong was very decisive. Yiqing Luo nodded her head in satisfaction, and immediately walked towards Miao Rongrong. She didn't miss it. The moment she lifted her foot, Miao Yixiong's eyes were filled with uncontrollable excitement and hostility. The corners of her lips curled up, but she didn't seem to mind. With Ah Xian by her side, she could leave her back to Ah Xian without reservation. She believed in Ah Xian's ability. Her feet stopped by Miao Rongrong's bedside. Chapter 26-21. Her fingers were about a fist's distance away from Miao Rongrong. Behind her, she felt the change and fluctuation of the airflow. She didn't turn back. Instead, her lips curled into an evil smile, with a hint of ridicule. Swoosh, there was an extremely faint sound of something slicing through the air. Following that, was Miao Yixiong's painful groan. She frowned slightly. She did not sense the sense of danger that was surging towards her back as she had imagined. Just as she was about to turn back, her ears twitched. That hand which was about to touch Miao Rongrong suddenly shook and a red feather fan suddenly opened up in her palm. Clang clang, the sound of weapons clashing was extremely crisp. The glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands coincidentally blocked a sharp dagger. She raised her eyes slightly and met Miao Rongrong's eyes, which were filled with shock and disbelief. Yiqing Luo's gaze was like a torch as she stared straight into Miao Rongrong's eyes. Her long and narrow eyes overflowed with a meaningful smile. But Miao Rongrong could clearly see that the curve of the young girl's lips was suffused with a chilling coldness that made one shudder. You. She opened her mouth in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Yi Luo could still maintain such a sharp reaction when facing a dying person. She also couldn't believe that her foolproof plan was seen through by Yiqing Luo. Surprised? Yiqing Luo smiled lightly. Her voice was calm and her face was still elegant. But the more it was like this, the more it made Miao Rongrong's heart felt as though it was being strangled by something, as though it was about to be torn into pieces. It made one horrified and terrified. Yiqing Luo continued to smile as her 5 fingers moved. The red feather fan in her hand rotated in her palm. Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain coming from the hand which was holding the dagger. The dagger in her hand fell onto her bed. At the same time, Yiqing Luo closed the glower flame fan and with a flip, a sharp blade slid out from the fan handle. The cold and sharp blade gleamed with a cold glint as it stuck to Miao Rongrong's neck. Following that, Yiqing Luo glanced sideways and looked behind her. As expected, Miao Yixiong was sprawled on the ground in a sorry state, spitting out blood. As for Dmo Xian, he stood elegantly by the side, his deep inky eyes gazed deeply at her. She glanced sideways. The cold lines on the man's face softened. The corners of his lips curled upwards, his eyes filled with adoration. The two of you knew from the beginning, knew. Miao Yixiong coughed as he staggered to his feet, blood dripping from his mouth. Yes, we know. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as her brows revealed an elegant smile. Cooperating with you is merely to see what kind of high-level tricks you can come up with. She paused for a moment, and then her smile turned into a sneer. But I'm very disappointed. Your techniques are too weak. Miao Yixiong's face was ashen and filled with ruthlessness. There was no trace of the kindness he had before. It was hideous, twisted, and extremely terrifying. Yi Qing Luo looked down at Miao Rongrong with a pale face. She couldn't believe that the outcome had completely gone against her plan. She moved the glower flame fan in her hands. The sharp blade left a small mark on Miao Rongrong's neck. Blood gushed out. Miao Rongrong was so shocked that her body shrank, her eyes widened in horror, but she didn't dare to open her mouth or shout out a word. What does Miao Yixiong want to do? Yi Qing Luo looked at Dmo Xian, and then looked at Miao Yixiong, who was standing unsteadily, somewhat curious about their plans. Chapter 26-22. It was indeed a parasite. Yi Qing Luo sneered, "You have the guts to use a parasite on you." She raised her brows as she stared at Miao Yixiong, her gaze scanning his body. "Where's his parasite?" Dmo Xian's gaze turned cold as he shook his head. In his mind, he recalled the earlier scene, just as Yi Qing Luo bent over to check on Miao Rongrong's condition. His gaze had been on Yi Qing Luo. It was at this moment. Miao Yixiong quietly moved behind him. Miao Yixiong's movements were extremely gentle. But the moment he moved, it caused the air to fluctuate. He had already sensed it. And because of this, before Miao Yixiong could get close, he was subdued by him. He clearly saw Miao Yixiong swiftly retracting his hand. That flash of black wooden box, a fingernail-sized parasite, came into view. But after Miao Yixiong was subdued, he used his perception to scan Miao Yixiong. He didn't sense any signs of the parasite. Couldn't find any signs of the parasite? Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as her gaze scanned Miao Yixiong from top to bottom. Indeed, she didn't sense any other living being's presence. But since Dmo Xian saw Miao Yixiong holding the parasite and wanted to use it on him, then Miao Yixiong must have hidden the parasite on him. But what method did Miao Yixiong use to hide the presence of the parasite in front of Dmo Xian and her? When Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian's gaze fell onto Miao Yixiong, Miao Yixiong's face was filled with gloomy clouds as his brows were overflowing with viciousness. He tensed up as his gaze fell onto Miao Rongrong, who was trembling in fear on the bed as he gritted his teeth. Trash. If it wasn't for Miao Rongrong, this plan, no matter how vigilant the Overlord and Yi Luo were, they would definitely succeed. It was all because of Miao Rongrong, that trash. Under such circumstances, she still couldn't subdue Yi Luo. Because of the Overlord's pampering towards Yi Luo. As long as she subdued Yi Luo, she would be able to make the Overlord surrender. Wait a minute. Miao Yixiong's ruthless eyes flashed with a trace of chilliness. His eyes were covered with a thin layer of coldness. Under the evil aura, it wasn't obvious at all. Miao Rongrong, who was reprimanded by Miao Yixiong, suddenly felt that she had been wronged. She's a cripple, you're also a cripple, the both of you are just about the same. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up into a smile. Miao Yixiong's face was ashen as he stared at Yi Qing Luo. The resentment in his eyes was extremely obvious. Yi Qing Luo ignored his gaze as she continued to smile. Leader Miao, I gave you a second chance but you refused to accept it, so don't blame me and Xian. Opportunity? Miao Yixiong was so angry that the wounds all over his body were hurting as if they were being torn apart. He sneered, you are giving me a chance, giving the Miaogu clan a chance? You clearly knew that I and that trash were plotting against you. Come and laugh at us. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes as she exclaimed in surprise, yeah, Chief Miao has actually become smart. You. Miao Yixiong was so angry that the muscles on his face were trembling. The blood in his chest was about to gush out from his mouth. His eyes were gloomy as he clenched his fists tightly. suppressing the urge to vomit blood. Kill me or dismember me as you wish. I want to see if our Miaogu clan, which has existed for hundreds of years, can be destroyed just because you say so. Yiqing Luo was slightly surprised. She couldn't help but took a few glances at Miao Yixiong. Chapter 26-23. According to what she thought would happen next, Miao Yixiong knew that he had no chance to fight back. Weren't they supposed to kneel and beg for mercy in order to survive? That was more like Miao Yixiong's personality. Could it be? What other tricks did he have? Oh right, in Miao Yixiong's hands, there was still that goo worm which even Dmo Xian was unable to detect. He still had not given up on the idea of poisoning Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo thought of this point. Dmo Xian naturally thought of this as well. He did not care about the goo poison. If he wanted Miao Yixiong's life, he could have taken his life before Miao Yixiong took out the poison. He was only standing here to accompany his little Luo heir. Whether it was Miao Yixiong or Miao Rongrong, all of them had the potential to help Long Yunzhan suppress the poison. Miao Yixiong had to stay alive. The unknown poison was still in Miao Yixiong's body, and it was too dangerous. Ah Xian, find out where the venom in his body is. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Rongrong who was beside her. It was probably because Yiqing Luo's attention had been placed on Miao Yixiong which led to her trembling hands. The sharp blade on the handle of the fan left several marks on Miao Rongrong's neck. Drops of blood dripped down. Miao Rongrong had already fallen into a coma. He looked at the sharp blade that was stained with blood. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she rubbed the sharp blade on Miao Rongrong's body, until the blood on the blade was wiped clean. She took out a handful of medicinal powder from the profound phoenix ring and sprinkled it on the sharp blade. This was the cleaning powder that Yiqing Luo was researching on. While she was disinfecting the sharp blade, she turned her head and walked towards Dmo Xian. Animals are very sensitive to goo worms. I'll let Chi come out and look for it. Be careful of the parasite. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and grabbed the young lady's wrist, pulling her to his side. His tall and sturdy body completely blocked Yiqing Luo in front of her, obstructing the distance between Yiqing Luo and Miao Yixiong. Yiqing Luo kept the glower flame fan and called out Chi to sniff the scent of the goo worm. When he saw Chi's petite little kitten appear, he felt a chill run down his spine. Miao Yixiong's pupils contracted. He took a few steps back, his eyes filled with vigilance. Ao. Chi seemed to have sensed something and suddenly let out a low growl. You found something? Yiqing Luo understood the meaning of Chi's cry. She walked over and bent down to hug Chi. Just as she was about to turn around and pull Dmo Xian along with Chi's reminder, to find the hidden goo worm on Miao Yixiong. When she turned around, her eyes suddenly widened when she saw the figure behind her. Her expression changed abruptly and her little hand immediately grabbed onto Dmo Xian's arm. Ah Xian, be careful. Her other hand swiftly raised up and a majestic wave of air rose from her palm. With a force that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas, it struck towards Dmo Xian's back. Damned Miao Rongrong. He actually pretended to be unconscious to deceive her. He actually wanted to sneak an attack on Dmo Xian while all their attention was on Miao Yixiong. She sure has guts. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with a cold murderous intent which was extremely cold. But, after her palm struck out, Yiqing Tang's expression changed. Miao Rongrong had no intention of dodging. Instead, he met her palm strike head-on and rushed towards Dmo Xian. Miao Rongrong's eyes and face were filled with madness and distortion. She didn't want to live anymore. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as she pulled Dmo Xian's arm and was about to rush in front of him to block Miao Rongrong's attack. However, the man didn't move an inch. He held the young lady's slender waist tightly as his deep and chilly peach blossom eyes seemed to be engulfed with thick black billowing waves. Chapter 26-24. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo struggled to break free from Dmo Xian's arms. even though he had discovered that Miao Rongrong was going to make a move on Dmo Xian. Then, she tried to stop Miao Rongrong. It seemed like a long time. In reality, it only took a few breaths. Her struggles, to Dmo Xian, were of no use. He could only watch helplessly. Miao Rongrong's face, which was filled with a maniacal smile, grew larger in front of his eyes. Yi Qing Luo saw it clearly. In Miao Rongrong's hand was a palm-sized transparent porcelain bottle, and she threw it onto Dmo Xian's back. Inside the porcelain bottle was a thick red liquid that looked like human blood. What made Yi Qing Luo's expression change abruptly and her pupils constricted? Floating in the middle of the liquid was a little bug that was not much bigger than an ant. The insect was greenish-black in color. It was extremely obvious in the blood-colored liquid. Goo worms. Goo worms again. Although Yi Qing Luo didn't know much about venomous insects. However, when he saw that this strange insect was taken out from Miao Rongrong's hands, he couldn't help but frown. It could only be the goo worms. Yi Qing Luo tried her best to raise her hand, trying to wave the porcelain bottle away. But the moment that porcelain bottle smashed onto Dmo Xian's body, then, it shattered into pieces. That greenish-black goo worm was moving at the speed of light, fusing into Dmo Xian's skin. Ah, Xian! Yi Qing Luo's eyes surfaced a murderous chill as she struggled even harder. Her widened eyes gradually reddened. The goo worm had entered Dmo Xian's body. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Yi Qing Luo felt that the man who was hugging her tightly seemed to have become heavier. Yi Qing Luo felt flustered and raised her hand to push Dmo Xian's chest, trying to raise her head to look at the man's face. But Dmo Xian's long arm covered her head tightly. Above her head, the man's low and steady voice floated down, "I'm fine." "Are you stupid? Based on your speed, you should have been able to avoid it." Yi Qing Luo's voice was almost choking. No matter how steady Dmo Xian's voice was, no matter how he acted as if nothing had happened, Yi Qing Luo could also guess it. Dmo Xian was definitely not fine like what he said. Otherwise, it was impossible for Dmo Xian to stop her from raising her head. "You're right behind me." Dmo Xian hugged her tightly. "Trust me, I'm really fine. Just let me hug you for a while." A few simple sentences. As strong as Yi Qing Luo was, her tears still rolled down uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes. Her little hands clutched the front of Dmo Xian's robes tightly. Because she was behind him. If he dodged, Miao Rongrong's goo worm would land on her. So, he chose to protect her and suffered the pain of the parasite entering his body. It was all because of her. If it wasn't for her, Xian wouldn't have been poisoned. Ahaha. Ha ha ha. You didn't expect this, did you? After all the planning, you still can't escape this fate. Miao Yixiong laughed proudly. His eyes were ruthless and murderous as he looked at the two people hugging in front of him. The plan succeeded. The plan succeeded, ha ha ha, that's not a love goo, Miao Rongrong, who had successfully implanted the goo worm into Dmo Xian's body, took on the palm strike which Yi Qing Luo struck out in a fit of rage. Miao Rongrong seemed to have lost half of her life as she laid on the ground, barely breathing. Miao Yixiong bared his teeth. "Not a love goo? What kind of goo is that? How dare you hide a goo worm behind my back?" Miao Rongrong's lips twitched weakly. She didn't bother about Miao Yixiong. Chapter 26-25. Trash. Miao Yixiong scolded angrily. Damn it. He thought that Miao Rongrong that trash had become smarter and learnt to hold back. She finally managed to implant a goo worm into the overlord. But it wasn't the love worm in the plan. His chilly eyes narrowed into a slit as he stared coldly at the young lady who had her back facing him, nestled in the man's arms, sobbing softly. The madness in his eyes gradually turned sinister. He swiftly raised his right hand and covered his chest. His 5 fingers suddenly curled. His sharp fingernails scratched the skin on his chest. 5 fingers sank into his own chest. The two of them who were hugging each other sensed a surge of profound chi fluctuation. Yiqing Luo was hugged tightly by the man and was unable to struggle free. She could only vaguely see. Miao Yixiong's palm was filled with red blood. The thick blood gradually took shape in his palm. Compared to the goo worm that Miao Rongrong threw onto Dmo Xian, it was several times bigger. Miao Yixiong actually hid the goo worm in his profound jade heart. No wonder she and Dmo Xian had not sensed any signs of life from Miao Yixiong. Sealed in the profound jade heart, no one would be able to sense it. But it was impossible for Miao Yixiong not to know. To nurture such an evil thing in the profound jade heart, it would affect his body. If his luck was bad, there was a possibility of being devoured by the goo worm. Miao Yixiong actually used such a method to hide the goo worm for them. Xian. Let's go quickly. From Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's conversation earlier, Miao Rongrong had poisoned Dmo Xian. It wasn't planned by the father and daughter pair, but Miao Rongrong's selfishness. That ant-sized goo worm was different from the goo worm that Miao Yixiong wanted to plant. Miao Yixiong had painstakingly planned for such a long time. It was to implant the goo worm in his hands into Dmo Xian's body. That goo worm. There was definitely a huge problem. Hugging the man's waist tightly, Yiqing Luo prepared to move along with him. But the man's body was as hard as a rock. She couldn't move him at all. Xian. Yiqing Luo's voice trembled as she realized that the goo worm which was implanted into Dmo Xian's body was much more harmful than what she had imagined. Obviously, Dmo Xian now unable to move. She bit her lower lip and both her hands hugged Dmo Xian's waist tightly. Chi, come over and bring Xian away. Her back was almost to Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong still had the strength to take out that goo worm from the profound heart jade. He would definitely have the strength to poison them. Dmo Xian's body had already been implanted with a goo worm. He absolutely could not let Miao Yixiong implant the goo worm into Dmo Xian's body again. Yiqing Luo could feel the biting cold air and the fluctuation of the air behind her. But she couldn't hide. Just like before, when Dmo Xian blocked in front of her, there was no turning back, no hesitation. Because she was hiding. Miao Yixiong's goo worm would be implanted into Dmo Xian. But what Yiqing Luo didn't expect was, when Miao Yixiong saw her back, he had already changed his target. His current target was aimed at Yiqing Luo. The Overlord's ability was unfathomable. Even if he was poisoned by the goo worm, it didn't mean that he had lost the ability to battle. Rather than to poison the Overlord. Why not poison Yi Luo, that slut? At least, Yi Luo was easier to control. As long as he controlled Yi Luo, would the Overlord not surrender obediently? Perhaps. Chapter 26-26. This thought made Miao Yixiong's heart like a demon. He was mumbling, Yi Luo. Yi Luo. Yi Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't know that Miao Yixiong had already targeted her. But even if she knew, she wouldn't avoid him at all. Yiqing Luo's back was facing Miao Yixiong. Other than sensing that Miao Yixiong was getting closer, she didn't notice that. Miao Yixiong's crazed and malevolent face, that pair of vicious eyes, lingered. That wisp of faintly discernible black aura. It was fleeting. No one could catch it. Chi heard Yiqing Luo's command and let out a low growl. Its tiger claws slammed hard on the ground. The tiny kitten body suddenly transformed into an ordinary-sized white tiger. It opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth, gleaming coldly. Chi-Chi's speed was extremely fast. Within a few breaths, it had already rushed to Dmo Xian's back. It opened its mouth and was about to bite Dmo Xian's robe. Ah woo. A low growl was heard, Chi-Chi's teeth collided. It bit empty air. At the same time, Miao Yixiong's palm was full of blood, with a goo worm stuck in the blood, following the swift and fierce palm wind, heading straight for Yiqing Luo's back. Yi, Luo. Obediently become my dog. Miao Yixiong laughed arrogantly, his voice was hoarse. Manchester United went crazy. Just as that palm was about to land on Yiqing Luo, she felt. The man whose body was as hard as a rock, unable to move no matter what. Suddenly, her body surged with a scorching heat. That scorching feeling almost scalded her hand, which was tightly wrapped around his waist. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened, her body left Dmo Xian's and looked up at him. Her eyes were covered by the man's warm and broad palm. Bam! Yiqing Luo's body suddenly staggered as she was pulled by the man. Her footsteps were messy and she almost fell into the man's arms. At the same time, what entered her ears was the sound of the palm wind landing on her body. Her spine stiffened. Gradually, his entire body stiffened a little. Miao Yixiong's palm had hit. However, she did not feel the pain that she had imagined. He didn't feel any goo worm entering his body either. Then, she thought of the man's sudden tightening of his arms and the stagger under his feet. Her heart skipped a beat. It was as if something was clutching her heart tightly. Even her breathing had become a little more difficult. Xian, there was a hint of choking in her voice. What are you doing? She tried to look up. However, the large palm that was covering her eyes was tightly pressed against her eyes. Beside her ear was the man's dark and hoarse voice, bit by bit, fiddling with her heart. Don't cry, if you cry, I will be sad. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. The moment he opened his mouth, Yiqing Luo listened to that voice which was filled with love and heartache. She could only feel the guilt in her heart surging to her eyes. She simply couldn't hold it in. Tears wet the man's clothes. How could she not understand? Earlier, when Dmo Xian's body was emitting a scorching aura, she could still feel the robust profound energy surging within his body. Dmo Xian had used his own profound energy to break through the goo worm which had entered his body. He did this just to protect her once again. Miao Yixiong. I want you to die. Chapter 26-27. Miao Yixiong. He dared to make a move on Xian. Even if he died 1,000 times, 10,000 times, it would not be enough to repay for what he had done to Xian. She wanted Miao Yixiong to suffer and die in pain. Yiqing Luo's rationality was gradually swallowed up. The profound jade heart in her chest also gradually became scorching hot. Her eyes, at this moment, were filled with a blood-like coquettish and gloomy coldness. The current Yiqing Luo was like an Azura from hell. Her entire person was filled with a bloodthirsty, sadistic cold intent. Ah. Want my life? Ha. Without the Overlord, you still want my life? Miao Yixiong laughed sinisterly. He stood up shakily. On his chest, there was still blood gushing out from the hole that his 5 fingers had pierced. The thick liquid soaked his clothes. He didn't seem to notice it at all. His ruthless eyes, crazily and proudly, looked at Yiqing Luo. Towards Yiqing Luo's murderous intent, he had no fear at all. What did you do to Xian? Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes, coquettish and cold, like a sharp blade, ruthlessly cutting Miao Yixiong's skin. Ha. I didn't intend to do anything to him, but a freak combination of factors let my plan succeed. Miao Yixiong laughed even more crazily. From now onwards, he, Dmo Xian, is my Miaogu family's dog. Woo. Behind her, Chi-Chi's tiger roar suddenly came out. This roar also called back a trace of Yiqing Luo's rationality. Yiqing Luo turned her head. She saw the man who forcefully used his profound energy to break through the goo worm entering his body, fell straight down. Xian. Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes flashed, the murderous intent gradually dissipated. The surging emotions in her chest were also suppressed. She flew swiftly towards Dmo Xian, trying to catch his fallen body. Woo! Chi was already lying under Dmo Xian. The soft fur firmly caught Dmo Xian. Ah Xian! Yiqing Luo half squatted beside Dmo Xian, raised her hand, and touched his face. It was cold to the touch. Beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Ha ha ha! Miao Yixiong's wild laughter was extremely loud. He laughed heartily. As though the humiliation which they had suffered from Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian for the past few days had been returned to them by several folds. Looking at the unconscious Dmo Xian. Then, he looked at Yi Luo, whose face was full of heartache and whose eyes were still dripping with tears. He felt more and more satisfied. Yi Luo, don't worry and die. Our Miao Gu deathly silence will definitely take good care of this dog. His words fell. Miao Yixiong's ferocious and violent attack had already overtaken Yiqing Luo's direction. This tyrannical power, it was absolutely not the same strength he had when he was facing Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo's keen senses told her that something was amiss. She lowered her voice and reminded Chi, take good care of Xian. Don't let anyone near him. Soon after, with a flick of his fingers, the devouring flame fan in his hand abruptly stirred up a whirlwind, bringing with it a ferocious and chilling killing intent as it met Miao Yixiong's attack, seeing Yiqing Luo's counterattack. Miao Yixiong's twisted face curled into a treacherous and complacent sneer. As though he was ridiculing Yiqing Luo for taking the bait. Chapter 26-28. Just as Miao Yixiong finished his words, a strong gust of wind swept through the entire bedroom. Miao Yixiong opened his palm towards Miao Rongrong's direction. That hurricane lifted Miao Rongrong's body into Miao Yixiong's palm. Miao Yixiong casually threw Miao Rongrong to Dmo Xian's side. With this fall, Miao Rongrong felt as if her internal organs were about to be shattered. She endured the pain. She had no time to care about the bleeding wound on her body. Bit by bit, she moved towards Dmo Xian. Get lost. Miao Rongrong, if you dare to get close to my man, I will make you beg for death. Yiqing Luo's eyes were bloodshot as she stared straight at Miao Rongrong. The extreme chill was bone-chilling. It made Miao Rongrong freeze on the spot. Ow woo. Taking advantage of Miao Rongrong's momentary daze, Chi opened its mouth and bit Miao Rongrong's arm with its sharp teeth. Miao Rongrong screamed. Fresh blood flowed out from Chi's mouth. She could vaguely hear the sound of bones breaking. Yi Luo, soon. Your overlord will open his eyes, but by then, what awaits you will be. He. You know. Yiqing Luo was about to rush to Dmo Xian's side to stop Miao Rongrong from getting close. Miao Yixiong pestered Yiqing Luo again. He laughed sinisterly, as if he had already imagined what would happen when Dmo Xian opened his eyes. His face was filled with a complacent smile. What did Miao Yixiong's words mean? What kind of poison did he cast on Dmo Xian? Yiqing Luo's heart was getting more and more flustered. Towards Miao Yixiong, who was pestering her, her attacks became more and more severe. But she didn't know why. This Miao Yixiong, who was obviously not that powerful and was afraid of death. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds. She couldn't break free from Miao Yixiong's pestering. On the other side, even though Miao Rongrong's arm was bitten by Chi, she still stubbornly climbed to Dmo Xian's side. That face, which was distorted due to pain, was filled with a crazy smile. She stared at Dmo Xian's face in a daze. Her blood-stained hands wanted to caress his face. But when he saw the blood on his fingertips, she paused. Then, he laughed foolishly. Lord Overlord is so noble and elegant. I'm very dirty now, so I can't dirty you. Later. I'll let you hug me, and you'll have to hug me. My Lord Overlord, roar. Hearing Miao Rongrong's words, Chi-Chi's eyes were filled with anger. The overlord belongs to master. The overlord can only belong to the master. This roar. Chi-Chi did not control her strength well. With a crack, Miao Rongrong's right arm was bitten off, blood spurted out. Miao Rongrong did not respond. Her eyes stared unblinkingly at Dmo Xian. It was obvious that he had become an idiot. This scene fell into Yiqing Luo's eyes. She evaded Miao Yixiong's attacks while keeping an eye on Dmo Xian's situation. When he saw Miao Rongrong's abnormal reaction, he felt a chill run down his spine. Her heart skipped a beat. An extremely ominous premonition began to spread in his heart. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Miao Rongrong's performance was even scarier than that idiot. Her own arm was bitten off, but she didn't feel any pain at all. And Miao Yixiong, what on earth was going on, to be able to use his profound grade to fight her to a draw in just a few days? No, it was not a draw. Because Miao Yixiong did not use his full strength. He was just trying to delay time. Chapter 26-29. Girl, don't let Miao Rongrong get close to Sovereign. Yiqing Luo felt a burning sensation on her wrist and heard Old Man Song's urgent voice in her mind. You must go to the Overlord's side immediately. Otherwise, even a venerable sovereign would not be able to resist the corrosion of the goo poison. Yiqing Luo heard the urgency in Old Man Song's tone. What kind of venom did they use on Xian? That's love goo. Old Man Song quickly explained. The host implanted with the love goo will faint for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. During this time, the love goo will completely invade the host's consciousness. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the first person that the host sees when he opens his eyes will be the person that he is attached to and devoted all of his affection to. Old Man Song's words made Yiqing Luo's heart violently tremble. It was as if something had pierced her heart. Miao Yixiong wants to use the love goo to control Dizun and make him fall in love with Miao Rongrong. Old Man Song's tone became more and more urgent. Girl, you can't let Dizun become attached to Miao Rongrong. Otherwise, with Dizun's strength and character, he would rather die than listen to the Miao tribe's orders. Yiqing Luo's fingers curled up as she looked at Dmo Xian. Her heart convulsed, and it was hard for her to breathe. This was, with Xian's temperament. He was controlled by a goo worm. He would rather perish indiscriminately. Furthermore, it was the Miaogu clan that wanted to control him. In other words, it was necessary to control him to hurt her and the people around her. How could Xian bear to do that? She did not know how powerful the goo poison was. However, he also believed that it wasn't a coincidence that the Miao tribe had survived for nearly 1,000 years. She could not let Xian become a puppet of the Miaogu family. TSK. You're so worried about a man that you don't even care about your own life? Miao Yixiong's cold laughter rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo was in a daze. This gave Miao Yixiong an opportunity to strike his palm on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Yiqing Luo took a few steps back. The sharp pain in her shoulder made her face slightly pale. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she placed one hand on the shoulder that was hit. From the corner of her eyes, she glanced at Dmo Xian's direction. His heart burned with anxiety. From the time Dmo Xian was implanted with the venom, it had already been at least half an incense's time. Miao Yixiong would never give her a chance to get close to Dmo Xian. What should she do, Miao Rongrong that lunatic? In order to gain Dmo Xian's attention, she didn't even care about her own life. If this went on, sooner or later, it would be too late for Dmo Xian to open his eyes. Old Man Song's voice sounded again. Following Old Man Song's surprised tone, Yiqing Luo felt the scorching heat on her arm and quickly shifted to her shoulder. Old Man Song continued, No. Little girl, Miao Yixiong's power is completely different from before. Yiqing Luo's expression was grave as she nodded lightly. I know. She had fought with Miao Yixiong before. How could he not know Miao Yixiong's strength? The palm landed on her shoulder. She was even more certain of her guess. This Miao Yixiong, otherwise, he would find their Miao Gu tribe's forbidden Gu worms and raise his strength for a short period of time. Either, that was, the mysterious person who had come into contact with Miao Rongrong, the one who had surpassed the Nirvana realm, had helped him. She still remembered the time when Miao Rongrong was imprisoned in the Battle King's residence by Yuan Zhan. Miao Rongrong had met that mysterious person. At that time, even Jun Qingwu had some fear towards that person's strength. If it was because of that mysterious person. Chapter 26:30. No, what I mean is. Old man Sung lowered his voice. This palm wind of his carries a very familiar power. Familiar? Yiqing Luo's expression froze. Immediately, she flew up and swiftly avoided Miao Yixiong's next attack. Yes, although the feeling is very weak, but I can confirm that this palm wind is mixed with the aura of the dark forces. Old man Sung's voice was obviously solemn. Dark forces? These 4 words made Yiqing Luo's eyes widen suddenly. Her gaze towards Miao Yixiong was also filled with astonishment. Hadn't the dark forces been taken away by the upper realm's peace messenger? How could there still be the aura of the dark forces left in Nirvana realm? Yiqing Luo frowned. This matter was getting more and more complicated. Forget it. Now was not the time to consider this. She had to snatch her man back first. After that, she would slowly investigate the reason why Miao Yixiong became stronger. Chi. Yiqing Luo pulled herself together and quickly retreated while shouting Chi-Chi's name. Chi bit off Miao Rongrong's arm. As a sacred beast which had not killed for thousands of years, it felt that it was too bloody. Moreover, Miao Rongrong's flesh was too smelly. It was filled with the stench of Gu worms. It really couldn't take a second bite. It heard Yiqing Luo's cry. It almost slithered out from Dmo Xian's body and dashed towards Yiqing Luo. Trap Miao Yixiong, I'll go to Ah Xian first. Yiqing Luo quickly retreated behind Chi. Ao Wu. Chi indicated that this was absolutely no problem. Chi let out a long howl and suddenly pounced towards Miao Yixiong. Yi Luo. Miao Yixiong was gloating because he hit Yiqing Luo. But he saw Yiqing Luo suddenly change to a snow-white tiger. She wanted this tiger to entangle him? An ordinary magical beast dared to try and stop him? Overestimating herself. Miao Yixiong sneered, totally not putting Chi in his eyes. Profound energy gathered in his palms and directly hit Chi-Chi's tiger head. He was completely confident that this palm strike would definitely be able to smash the white tiger into meat paste. Bam bam bam. As the wind from the palm slammed down, the sound of the force stirring up everything in the surroundings was heard. A strong hurricane swept through the bedroom. A huge pit appeared on the ground. Rubble flew everywhere, and the room began to shake. Miao Yixiong retracted his palms and quickly scanned his surroundings. That palm of his just now, he missed the white tiger. Roar, a majestic tiger roar came from behind. Miao Yixiong turned around. A claw directly scratched his face. Chi-Chi's sharp claws scratched the skin on Miao Yixiong's face, leaving bloody scratches. Miao Yixiong's face was a bloody mess. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she gave Chi a thumbs up. She then turned around and dashed towards Dmo Xian's direction. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. The Overlord is mine. Miao Rongrong sensed Yiqing Luo's approach and she abruptly raised her head as her pair of sinister eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. That crazy and malevolent face, sinister, was extremely terrifying. Yiqing Luo met with Miao Rongrong's eyes which were filled with madness and infatuation. She knew that this Miao Rongrong's mental state was not normal. Calculating the time in her heart, one joss stick's time was almost up. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered with Miao Rongrong. She directly lifted her leg and kicked Miao Rongrong to the corner. She immediately squatted down and was about to get close to Dmo Xian. Chapter 26:31. As soon as Miao Yixiong finished speaking, Yiqing Luo was keenly aware of the changes in the airflow. With her feet as the center, a horrifying airflow surrounded her body and attacked her. The air current that carried a murderous aura. This caused Yiqing Luo to stop in her tracks. Not good. Old Song floated around inside the azure dew bracelet. Girl Luo, Miao Yixiong wants to use a gu formation to trap you. Gu formation? What the hell was that? Just the name alone was enough to tell that it wasn't anything good. A gu formation is a formation that uses tens of thousands of gu worms. It's a long-lost forbidden gu technique. Old Man Song's voice trembled. How could Miao Yixiong use such a formation? Isn't he afraid of incurring the punishment of the heavenly Tao? This was a long-lost forbidden gu technique. Once it was used, the commotion it caused might attract the attention of the peace messenger. This was a forbidden gu technique that destroyed the balance of the Nirvana realm. If Miao Yixiong was taken away by the peace messenger, wouldn't the position of patriarch of the Miaogu aristocratic clan that he insisted on be for naught? To trap her. In order to control Dmo Xian. Miao Yixiong was even willing to take such a risk. Not allowing Yiqing Luo to think too much. The powerful streams of air around her feet gradually surrounded her. Then, countless poisonous insects of different shapes and sizes appeared in front of her. They followed the lingering airflow and wriggled towards her bit by bit. This array was extremely narrow. Yiqing Luo immediately turned around. It was very possible, touching the lingering airflow, touching the disgusting liquid that kept dripping down. The viscous green liquid was dripping. In this quiet bedroom, it was extremely strange. Lass, don't move. These goo worms have different uses. If they crawl into your body, you will be devoured by these goo worms. Starting from your internal organs, you will become their puppet. Old Man Song's voice was slightly tense. He had never expected that he would actually encounter such a sinister formation in the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo absolutely could not move. Before a goo worm comes into contact with a person's skin, its speed is very slow. They would follow the scent and slowly crawl to the human body, the minute Yiqing Luo was swallowed by these goo worms. So many goo worms, they would absolutely treat Yiqing Luo as food, completely swallowing her up. How do we break the formation? The fastest way. Yiqing Luo stood stiffly on the spot, her face filled with anxiety. Her eyes stared intently at Dmo Xian. The time it took for an incense stick to burn was almost up. No matter what, she had to leave this goo formation. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Miao Rongrong, who had been kicked to the corner by her, dragging her entire body covered in blood, leaning on one hand as she continuously crawled towards Dmo Xian. From this angle, Yiqing Luo could clearly see there was a black thread floating in Miao Rongrong's eyes. That thin thread seemed to be a tool to control her. I don't know much about goo. Old Man Song's heart was also burning with anxiety. He couldn't wait to rush out of the azure dew bracelet and suffer for Yiqing Luo. Unless the peace messenger rushes over at this critical juncture. Yiqing Luo, who was trapped by the goo worm. Not only did she have to watch Dmo Xian open his eyes and see Miao Rongrong, she also had to be devoured by the goo worm in front of Dmo Xian. Miao Yixiong was simply too sinister, too vicious. Even if the peace messenger rushed over, Dmo Xian had already opened his eyes and the first person he saw would still be Miao Rongrong. Chapter 26:32. Time was running out. Looking at Miao Rongrong and Dmo Xian, they were still a few steps away. Even if Miao Rongrong crawled closer to Dmo Xian. And the moment Dmo Xian opened his eyes, he crawled to Dmo Xian's side. No. She absolutely would not allow Dmo Xian to develop any attachment towards other women. Even if it was because of the goo poison. She absolutely could not tolerate it. Her man. No matter when, it could only belong to her alone. Lass, don't be rash. Old Man Sung realized what Yi Qing Luo wanted to do and immediately called out to stop her. Yi Qing Luo stared fixedly at the unconscious man lying on the ground. His gaze was so gentle that it seemed to carry the entire world. Her pink lips moved slightly, and she said word by word, "If I have to be separated from Ah Xian and see him no longer love me, I'd rather die with him." What future? What search for his origins? Find out the secret of the Azure Dew bracelet? What? Wait a minute, when Dmo Xian no longer loved her, lost his consciousness, and became a puppet. None of them counted for anything. Before she fell in love with Dmo Xian, she was indeed indifferent to love. But now, she had fallen in love with Dmo Xian. She wanted to stay by Dmo Xian's side forever. She had already determined that Dmo Xian was her man. If Dmo Xian forgot her because of the love worm, and no longer loved her, she believed that if Dmo Xian was conscious, he would also make the same decision as her. She had said it from the beginning. Her love could not tolerate even a grain of sand. She loves Dmo Xian. They loved each other so much that they would rather die together than be so close to each other but unable to touch each other. You could call her selfish or heartless. At this moment, her eyes and heart were filled with Dmo Xian alone. The corners of her mouth curled up into a chilly smile. It was as if a beautiful poppy had bloomed on her face. She exuded a suffocating yet irresistible charm. She raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. A sparkling and translucent pearl appeared in her palm. Calming pearl? Lass, you really want to do this? Old Man Sung really couldn't understand what Yi Qing Luo was thinking about right now. Even though Venerable Sovereign had been poisoned by the love goo. But that didn't mean that it couldn't be solved. At least he was still alive, wasn't he? Why must she sacrifice her own life to become the first person that Dmo Xian saw? He even took out the tranquility bead. Yi Qing Luo obviously wanted to borrow the power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade to forcefully break the formation. Yi Qing Luo herself was very clear about it. Her body had long since lost control of her Profound Heart Jade several times. It could no longer withstand the protective power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. Forcefully expending the power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. There was an 80% chance Yi Qing Luo would be completely swallowed by the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. However, no matter how Old Man Sung persuaded Yi Qing Luo, but he could only watch as Yi Qing Luo's profound energy kept on rising. The Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade that had lost the suppression of the heart-settling pearl, when Yi Qing Luo forcibly mobilized the power of the Profound Heart Jade. Bit by bit, something strange was happening. Yi Luo, what are you trying to do? Are you crazy? Miao Yixiong, who was being bitten by Qi, had also sensed Yi Qing Luo's movement. He looked in disbelief at the increasingly thick profound energy in the goo formation. Yi Luo, that slut. Was she trying to forcefully break the formation? For a man, she didn't even want her own life? Chapter 2633. Your Majesty. Wait for me, Miao Rongrong spat out a sentence with a weak breath and sped up the squirming speed of her body. Just a little more, she was about to make the Overlord fall in love with her. He was doted on by the Dizun. She was still the high and mighty Lady Miao, the future Holy Virgin of the Miao tribe. She looked at the handsome man in front of her. Miao Rongrong trembled as she stretched out that one hand which was still intact, and grabbed onto Dmo Xian's robes. Bang! An irresistible burst of profound energy charged towards Miao Rongrong's outstretched hand. The dark force was like a sharp blade. Quickly and coldly, Miao Rongrong's hand was cut off. Get your filthy hands off my man. A cold and murderous voice drifted into the ears of the father and daughter of the Miao family bit by bit. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were bloodshot. His eyes were sharp and his killing intent was obvious. He was in the middle of thousands of goo worms. The flames on her body forced those goo insects to not dare to come close to her. Meow Rong Rong, quick, quick. She couldn't get out. There's no way she can escape from the goo array. Miao Yi Xiong was so shocked by Yi Qing Luo's look that he broke out in cold sweat. He only felt that the look in the girl's eyes. There was not the slightest bit of warmth. It was like looking at a dead person. Fear spread in his heart. He subconsciously urged Miao Rongrong. Dmo Xian was about to open his eyes. No matter what, Miao Rongrong was definitely in an advantageous position. It didn't matter even if he lost his hands. The venerable emperor who was poisoned by the love goo. Miao Rongrong was extremely ugly. Dmo Xian would love her as much as his own life. Miao Rongrong also knew this. Even if her mind was not clear, she knew that she must become Dmo Xian's woman. One hand was bitten off. One of his hands was cut off by Qi. She didn't seem to feel any pain. He could not feel the spread of blood. Using her own body, she arched towards the direction of Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned even redder. Bit by bit, an extremely cold killing intent and madness lingered on it. The mystic rank was still increasing. It was about to burst the goo worms that were surrounding him into a mountain. Luo girl. Wake up. You can't do this. Quickly put the heart-calming bead back into the profound heart jade. If this goes on, not only will you not be able to break the goo formation, your meridians might even be severed. Old man Sung's voice kept on dissuading Yi Qing Luo in her mind. It was so anxious that it incessantly used the azure dew bracelet to burn Yi Qing Luo's wrist. I'm fine. Before Xian opens his eyes, I won't let anything happen to me. Yi Qing Luo's consciousness was still clear. Her eyes were filled with love as she gazed deeply at Dmo Xian's peerless and elegant face. His breathing gradually calmed down. Bang! There was a loud crash. The tightly shut door of the bedroom collapsed with a loud crash. Dust and gravel flew all over the ground. A clear voice rang from the door. Qing Luo, are you all right? Sorry I'm late. This voice had an instant of grooming. Yi Qing Luo's mind was suddenly in a daze. His crimson eyes slowly moved to the door. However, she did not have time to see the person standing at the door. A gigantic goo worm fell from the sky and landed beside her. This goo worm was roughly the size of the woman's two palms put together. Compared to the thousands of different goo worms around, it was indeed considered to be gigantic. The goo worm was entirely black. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.